Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hustling Sideways podcast. I'm Alan Halas. I'm a music writer.
And I am Jim Love, and I'm a keynote and motivational speaker.
And this is episode 35.
35. You just said 34. Okay. Well, that's
34.
All right, Alan messed up. There it is. 10 seconds in. Yeah, episode 34, where I said it was really funny. We just discussed this like
right before we went.
Yeah, so that's where we're at.
Episode 34.
34, correct.
Hustling Sideways.
It is currently, I know this won't be the date that you listen to, but it is currently early June in Milwaukee, and Milwaukee is alive.
It is actually
summer, like,
perfect.
It is literally 75 degrees, sunny out. I drove here, like, the windows were down. I was cranking Kid Cudi, if you're wondering what I was listening to, and it was fantastic. Sunglasses were on, seatbelt was on, everybody relaxed. It was good. There was going the speed limit and just flowing. And everyone's got a smile on. It really is different. And I know that's a Midwest thing. But specifically in Milwaukee, I feel like the city just pops when it's nice.
You should enjoy this because we have, by rule and by law, we only get like 2 more days like this the whole year, and then it's 2022.
Exactly. It is actually a law. Like, it's written somewhere.
It's weird. It's in the town chart.
I know. I don't know why they would do that. They're actually really messing with us. But we're so excited to be here and to be back and just keep this party rolling. And in the spirit of connections and the people we've been introduced to, our next guest is actually another introduction from a previous guest we had, Peter Velarde. So it's been just such a joy for Alan and I to connect with any number of people, from leadership to business consultants, et cetera, and just talk about passions. And now we have an opportunity to continue doing that. So we're going to introduce here our next guest is John Laurito. And John is a leadership expert, business consultant, author, and keynote speaker. Say that 10 times fast. You won't. John, welcome to Hustling Sideways. We're so happy to have you.
Hey, thanks, guys. Pleasure to be here. I love your opening there. I love the energy you guys have, and I love our conversation that we had the other week, Jim. So glad to be here.
Fantastic. And for the record, we don't have an applause button yet. So
Still working on it.
So we just make one for ourselves.
We could just could just put the applause in post.
Yeah, but then that would like kill the joke that we can't. We just got to continue doing it like this.
Our next podcast will be broadcast in front of a live studio audience. How about
Wouldn't that be amazing? Yeah,
we're gonna get them all into this very small room.
That's true. Yeah, stand by for that one. So John is based in North Carolina, which is another state that we have here. We talked about that before we got on. Fantastic. John, tell us a little bit about your background, your upbringing, family, and where you're currently at in your career.
Yeah. So, wow, there's just, I've gone on this crazy, incredible journey that I'm very grateful for. But I've number one, I'm in 51 years. I've lived in, I think, over 30 places. I tried to count. It was almost like 35. Almost hit 35. I've got a twin sister and a small family. I have 2 kids, Nick and Sky, who are now 16 and 19, and just a phenomenal family dynamic. But I've lived all over the place, and 2 years ago moved down to Holly Springs, North Carolina, which now I am close to my family. I've been all over the place, so it's always been like a flight away. Now I'm 2 blocks away from my sister. I'm 3 miles away from my parents. They're still alive and doing great, and so life is awesome. But I was up in Boston, hearing you guys talk about the weather up there. Wow, we had you'd have this 2-month period of time of great weather, and it would really quickly get cold, and you'd be prepared for winter. So everybody was out like this time of year outside because you knew it was short-lived. But, real quick synopsis, I started my business in financial services. So you mentioned Peter Velarde. I know Peter from when I started in the business in financial services in 1994. He was like a god at the company I was with, which is IDS Financial Services, now Ameriprise. I used to watch him on videotape and kind of mimic everything he did in terms of how he presented to clients and everything. And I started, did well as an advisor and got into leadership, and spent 20 years of my career in leadership, and just had this passion around it, almost like this crazy obsession of what makes great leaders so good. I studied them. I try to figure out exactly everything that went into being a great leader. And my experience was turning around these broken organizations. So my first opportunity was going to an office taking over in Hartford, Connecticut, which was ranked 100 out of 110 offices in the country. So it was like, let's give Laurito a shot. He can't screw it up any more than it already is. And I figured some things out, got some great people. That was a big thing, and turned it into the #1 office in the country. And went to Boston and did something similar, then went to DC and did something similar, and then back up to Boston and did something similar. So about 2 years ago, literally February 14th of 2020, I did something that I had been thinking about for a number of years, and that was to leave the corporate America world, leave my secure, high-paying, safe job, and take a major leap. And that was to start my own business. And I resigned on February 14th, 3 weeks before the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
Wow.
My game plan at that point was to do keynote speeches on leadership. And I had all kinds of stuff lined up. I had keynotes around the country. I had a TED Talk lined up. And I felt great, confident. And then 3 weeks later, the whole world shut down and everything evaporated. Yeah. So I had hit that major oh shit moment, like, wow, what the heck did I do? Yeah. But you look back and it was the best decision by far I've ever made. I am incredibly happy in a weird way that turned out to be the perfect time to do what I'm doing, because I'm now working with companies and organizations around developing their leaders to the highest level possible. And this has been just the perfect time to do that. It was a little bit of a strategy game plan shift, but it's been an unbelievable ride in these last couple of years. So I spend my time consulting companies. I coach executives on leadership. I do keynotes all over the place. And I have a blast. Loving life.
I love it. I could tell. I'm so curious. Just going back to your experience of walking in, to a company in an office ranked 100 of 110, right? Like what does day one like that look like when you walk in and I almost picture like Office Space of the Bobs walking, like, oh, like here's here's this guy trying to come in and make a change. Like what is that vibe like for you when you enter that atmosphere, and how do people react to that?
Well, it's funny. It was scary. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It was overwhelming. It was like, okay, where do I start? That was my first real leadership assignment, so to speak. So it was really like a test and a lot of second guessing of yourself. I mean, but you realize the place is broken for a reason. And, it was that feeling of, where do I even start? So I remember my first day. I gave my first day speech and in front of the whole group, and I had it was an office of, I forget what it was, maybe 15 or 20 people. And I remember a few days later, I remember saying to one of my managers and said, "Wait, where's that guy that was sitting in the front with the white shirt?" And they were like, we don't know. He left that day. We haven't seen him since.
You just disappeared.
Literally, just walked out and left. That's it. I said, yeah. And we never saw him again. Literally, that was the way. Wow. He didn't like what I had to say in my first day speech, and wasn't up for the challenge of what I was putting out there and the vision I was casting out. But I realized, that's what it's all about. 100%. I mean, it's as important to get the right people on the bus as it is to get the wrong people off the bus. Mm-hmm. So I learned a really valuable lesson, that you have to be really clear. You can't try to appeal to everybody. Mm-hmm. You don't want to do that. You've got to be real clear with your vision, and then you find who selects themselves out or in based on that. So it was just, but it was a wild experience. A lot of fun, a lot of hard work. But yeah, those first early days were kind of crazy.
Now, did you know that it was ranked 100 out of 110 or however low it was? I'm sure you could kind of guess by looking around, but did you know that it was actually ranked that low?
I actually did, Alan. So I had seen the scorecard, so I knew everything going in. And it's funny, excuse me, a lot of people thought I was crazy. They're like, why would you do that? And I'm like, they literally, I can't do anything worse. I can't go anywhere but up. So that's why would I want to take something over that's already at the top? Mm-hmm. I mean, I want to put my mark on something and take something over. So I was actually looking for an office that was kind of broken. I didn't realize that I go somewhere where it was that broken.
Yeah.
But I did. I went in there with my eyes open. When I got there, I didn't realize what it looked like to be number 100. When I got there and realized, wow, I mean, there were people walking through the hallway. I remember when this was one of my managers walking through the hallway in the morning. He'd come in and he was shoulder slumped, head down, and his tie, I remember vividly, his tie wasn't even around his neck. It was in his hand and it was dragging on the floor behind him.
Oh my goodness.
And it just looked like he was walking into like the executioner, like to go in an electric chair or something. I mean, it was misery. And I'm like, and that was one of the managers setting the tone for the environment. I'm like, brutal. This is crazy. Yeah. So, it was a lot of that, and it was turning the culture around and changing people's attitudes and giving them a sense of hope. And then we started to climb a little bit and go from 100 to 95. And it's like, we celebrated it. We're like, hey, we could climb 5. We just beat 5 other offices. And then we did it again and we beat 5 more. And then every month it was higher and higher and higher and higher until we got to the top 10 and then ultimately to number 1. And it was a wild transformation.
I love that. And small victories are so important. Yes. I think, generally as a team or whatever it might be. And I love your analogy of the bus. And, it's just as important as putting people on as taking people off. And I think about that gentleman who left that day. And, some people shouldn't be part of a culture, and that's okay. And I know, I've dealt with people who are very negative, and that's just, the anti of what I am. And I steal this term from John Gordon, who's a speaker and an author, but he calls them energy vampires. And I know people like that. And that's what's going to bring everyone, down. So, to your point, that may have been at the moment a shot to the heart of wow, it was really that. But then you think about it, he didn't belong. This was something he didn't fit my vision. And that's a good thing. I think that's a really good thing that came about from that, where it felt like a negative at first.
Well, little did you know that guy's actually a Fortune 500 CEO now. No,
yeah, exactly.
His name was Elon something.
Yeah. Some kind of fish. Right. Yeah.
He was doing something with an electric something or other.
Figure it out. He was in the batteries. I don't know.
I think that creating that, having that challenge, that is the interesting part that stands out to me is saying, I didn't want to go towards the top of the chain and take over that. I want to put my mark on this. How do you train yourself for that sort of thing to say, okay, I actually don't want the let's call it a cushy top of the line kind of job. How do you kind of train your mind to be like, I want the thing that I want the broken Honda, not the BMW kind of thing, and I want to fix that thing up. What goes into that?
Well, I think I understood what leadership is and was at that point. And it's not, nobody remembers the guy or the girl that went into an organization that was number 1 and kept it number 1. Nobody remembers that person. They remember the people that did the come from behind victory and pulled something from the bottom to the top. And that's leadership. I mean, I think about, a leader's job is to change the outcome. It's to help people do things that they would not have done otherwise, to help them see something that they didn't see before and give them a sense of confidence. It's interesting. I remember the moment that I first realized what leadership was. And it was somebody who influenced me and it changed the outcome. It was in high school. I'll tell the story really quickly. I played baseball and I remember in a pretty clutch situation, and I was a pitcher, and with batting, I was either the guy who hit a home run or struck out, and I led the team in both. Literally, I swung for the fences all the time, and when I got a hold of it, it could go far. But I struck out a lot, and I got up to the plate. It was like classic situation: bases loaded, 2 outs, and I remember thinking to myself in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to strike out. I know I'm going to strike out. There's no doubt about it. And I'm like, I was praying that I'd get hit by the pitch because I'd rather get knocked in the head, knocked unconscious, and carried to first base and have to live through striking out. And my third base coach must have sensed that in me. He could see my body language, and he called timeout, called me over. I walked up to him, and it was me, him, and my teammate who was standing on third base. And my teammate said, John, just hit the ball. That's all you got to do is just hit the ball. I'm like, oh, geez, well, thanks, man. I didn't know that. That's brilliant. I'll just do that then. I didn't know that was what I was supposed to do. But my coach said something brilliant, and it was so matter of fact, and didn't even skip a beat. He said, oh, I know John's going to hit the ball, but listen, John, when you hit the ball, try to hit it to right field so we get in 2 runs, not just 1. And I remember, like, I was dumbfounded at how confident he was. I'm like, he knows I'm going to hit the ball. I'm like, he knows I'm going to hit the ball. Of course I'm going to hit the ball. I am going to hit the ball. And I walked back to the plate with a totally different mindset, totally different self-talk. And I'm like, I am going to hit the ball. Let me try to hit it to right field. Let me close my stance a little bit, lag my swing a little bit. And sure enough, the next pitch came in and I hit it over the fence for a grand slam.
Nice.
It was unbelievable. And awesome. It was I remember vividly thinking, as I rounded the bases, I'm like, I was going to strike out. There's no doubt about it. And that Coach Steinbrick's interaction with me that moment changed the outcome. Totally, 100% certain. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just the game. It wasn't just that moment. We won the game. But it was beyond that. It was me and the impact it had on the next game and the next game and the next game. And really the ripple effect it has through life, because that moment gives you confidence that you carry into your next interaction from there. So that was really my first, like, wow, like this whole mind-blowing experience of the power of leadership. So I think that's actually what got me on the journey of it. Mm-hmm. Long answer to your short question, but I think that was really, from that point on, I'm like, leadership is not about maintaining. Mm-hmm. It's about changing the course of the future and influencing people to think and do differently than they would have otherwise.
I'm like over here, like applauding. I'm like fully, I know you and I are in very, very similar mindsets in terms of leadership development and speaking. And it is so critical, particularly in motivating and in getting people to the next level of leadership, to literally breathe life into them. And that's what your coach did. He gave you something you didn't have, and it was a breath of life, and you remember it, and I think that's so important, and it was simple, and he knew exactly what he was doing, and that's what leaders can do. And I think people who think they aren't leaders, that I think they are, can do that every day. Like, mm-hmm. That's something we have the power to do constantly, and to tap that potential and actually give someone the ability and the platform in which to do so, and give them the courage to do that is really life changing. I mean, if you think about it, that put you on a trajectory that now has led to where you're at, and it was that small comment and confidence that he had in you, and that is so powerful. I love that example because it's perfect, and it's something that he probably has no idea that, like, that. I don't know if you told him that, or if that's been a thing that you did. Okay.
Yeah, it's so funny because I'm thinking about that as you're saying that. I did reach out to him because I was. This was not that long ago, and he doesn't even remember it, and which is fine. Because it was. Yep. That's even more powerful. It was such an insignificant moment, but he doesn't realize the significance that it had for me. Here I am, 30 something years later, mm-hmm. still thinking about it, telling stories about it, realizing the impact, and that's what leadership is too. You don't know the magnitude of those tiny moments. This was a 30-second conversation that had a 30-year plus impact, not only on me, but all the people that now I'm developing and leading mm-hmm. because of that, partly because of that.
Exactly.
So it's fascinating.
And it's so cool. And it's too in the way that it's like, if you really dumb it down, almost, if I'm speaking this to like a kindergartner, and I'm like, just be positive with someone. I mean, that's really, that's what it is. If you're positive and exude a sense of encouragement and having fun with it, like that's all it takes to take someone from being shut down to actually letting them have a voice and going. And I have this, I gave a commencement talk one time, and mm-hmm. I talked about the first 5 seconds, because the first 5 seconds you have with someone will quite literally make or break if they feel comfortable sharing something with you, or if they're done. The 5
yes.
seconds of acceptance of, hey, that's great, or give them a hug, whatever that is, or like, I don't think so. Like, and that moment is when they decide they're gonna be in this and give their opinion, or they're done, and that's it. And we have that opportunity literally every day. I'm like going off over here.
No,
but
that's okay, yeah.
I love that example because it is so key and so simple. And I love that you told him, by the way. That is really cool. And I'm sure he was just floored to hear that it's been 30 some odd years and that is, still a part of your life. And we probably have done that to people and have never been told. Like, that's happened.
Absolutely.
I think it's great.
And to an extent, I mean, not to take away from your baseball ability, but there could be a little bit of perception being reality there too. Mm-hmm. He came up and said, hey, I know he's going to hit the ball. I want him to, we want to score 2 instead of 1. He could have thought, okay, we got a 50-50 chance with this guy at the plate. You know what I mean? Like, but because he was
yeah.
able to instill that in you, you know,
Yeah.
it gave you the confidence to completely change your attitude and
Yeah.
change, you know, what you did out there because of it.
That's such a good point, Alan, because I almost know for certain he didn't think or know that I was going to hit the ball, put it that way, because
Right.
nobody knows somebody's going to hit the ball. I'm sure he was thinking the same thing that I was thinking and that my teammates were thinking, oh, geez, just, don't strike out. But again, that's okay. For a leader, I think about, can you leave somebody better off than you found them? Can the interaction improve them mentally or in some way, intellectually, whatever the case is, that leaves them better prepared for their next interaction? And that's amazing leadership. I mean, there's so much in life that's weighing us down. I mean, we are filled with our own negative self-talk. I mean, we're our worst critics all the time. And you got enough people out there that are willing to tell you what you stink at and what you're not good at and rejecting everything like that. That's You need to focus on helping people build confidence. And those tiny moments that you think are insignificant, those little conversations might have lifelong impacts for somebody else. We remember things that our teachers said to us, one or two teachers that might have said, good or bad, that kind of became a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we had somebody when we were young say, geez, you're always late, you get that in your head and you become always late. You really do, or they said, wow, you're so good at figuring stuff out. I don't know what it is. You can figure out these problems better than anybody does. Before you know it, you're doing that and you're becoming like, a rocket scientist or whatever that, because that you were set on that path of believing something. And that's so much of what this is all about.
Yeah,
I love it.
definitely.
Yeah. It's like everyday leadership. That's really, you have the power to do it all the time and probably don't realize how often you've done it. So were you about to ask a question?
Well, I was going to say that we should pivot a little bit to where this takes you now, to forming your own business, forming your own company, right before the pandemic. Unfortunately, with the timing on that, you're in a leadership position already. You're doing well. You're developing businesses and things like that. What's the kicker? What makes you go, hey, this is the moment for me. I need to strike out and do this on my own, good or bad?
Yeah, you know what? There was good and bad. So the thing that was pulling me to this was I had gotten some opportunities to do some keynotes in front of large audiences. And I remember standing on the stage and how it felt and realizing, okay, here I am. It happened to be a huge audience of 3,000 people. And I'm like, okay, I'm on this stage doing what I love to do. I feel energized and giving advice and helping impact these leaders. They were all leaders in that audience to become better leaders and impact other people. I'm like, I just realized the impact I could have by doing that versus running my organization. So part of it was the pull to realize that there's a bigger stage, figuratively speaking, out there for me to really be able to impact people. And the second thing was, to be honest with you, and part of it was a combination that the more I was in that role, the longer I was not doing what I truly wanted to do. And it went almost to this just ugly place. I remember waking up on a Sunday morning and opening up my eyes. And the first thought was, shit, I have work tomorrow. I hope I can say, I don't know if I can say.
Yeah, you're good.
Fine,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
fine.
yeah, you're good. Yeah.
I'm like, shit, I have work tomorrow. And my Sunday was like ruined. I got to the point where I didn't like Sundays. I enjoyed Saturdays, but as soon as I woke up on Sunday, I was stressed. I was anxious. I couldn't relax. I couldn't have fun. My mind was somewhere else. And I'm like, I am in the wrong business. I am doing the wrong thing. And there's no paycheck that I think is worth that. And everybody thought I was nuts. They're like, why are you gotta be kidding me? And this was not knowing anything about the pandemic. But they're like, why would you leave something that's stable and secure and you could just ride it out into the sunset and keep doing this? And you got everything you need. I mean, why walk away from that? And I'm like, it's not what makes me happy. It's not. And I know I can do more. And when somebody feels they can make a bigger impact, and if you're not doing what truly makes you happy, then you're in the wrong thing. You're going to figure it out. The money will solve for itself. And it's interesting too, because, once I left and made the jump. You got everybody that's saying, "Oh, hey, great, man, good job, great move." And then, behind the scenes, they're like, "I don't know what the hell he was thinking."
Yeah.
And then the pandemic hits, and they're like, "Oh yeah,
Right.
Laurito, bad move, bad move." But here I am 2 years later. I'm doing better now, not only emotionally and mentally, but even financially than I was when I left in a 2 year period of time. And I'm like, okay, I never would have known that. Yet I just knew that I had to pursue my passion.
Yeah.
And I had to pursue what makes me happy. And I wake up every single morning. It doesn't matter what morning it is. I'm happy as can be. I love what I do every single day. I love this. I love talking to people about leadership. I love presenting. I love consulting. I love coaching. I love every part of it. There's no part I don't. So it's like when you figure out what really makes you happy. Warren Buffett says it great. He says, he tells kids coming out of school, he said, take the job you would take if you were independently wealthy, because you're probably going to do pretty well with that. And you're going to be really, really happy.
Yeah,
and
it's
advice. True. It's really true. There's nothing more important in life than happiness.
We'll have to contact this Mr. Buffett guy and see if he wants
maybe he knows the other guy.
Come join.
Quiet,
yeah. So I want to go back to one thing you said, John, and because I totally vibe with this of, when you were on stage speaking to that 3,000 group, you remember how you felt. And I think that's the important part. And that's exactly what I had too when I first got on the stage about 7, 8 years ago, and was speaking to a conference of like 500, and I that the moment of where I felt like it was like one student that I looked at, and at that time it was a big group of student leaders, and I felt the connection that we had. In that moment where it's like I can't replicate this anywhere else in my life. Like the way that I felt, how we personally connected, how I felt that she responded to my words, and how it impacted her personally was something I, number one, didn't think I had the power to do. That was like never something I thought would happen. And number two, like, holy crap, like that was so cool. And I was like pumped for the week. It was like a Friday. I was pumped for the weekend, and I was like, I need to. And I had written that, like, not thinking I would do it that often. I was like, I'm gonna write this talk and have it for this. I got mentored, etc. And then when I did it, it was like, oh, this is it. Like, that's the one. And I like immediately had a vocation, and it just sort of happened without me ever anticipating that being a thing, but the way you phrased that was perfect. It was the way I felt down there, not relating to people, feeling, well, I guess I'm the youngest, I like being the center of attention, so that didn't hurt. Being on a stage didn't hurt. I will selfishly say that, but having that moment where you actually feel like your words had value and impacted and changed someone is powerful, and again, difficult to replicate anywhere else in my life. And the reason why I felt like that day, it was like in June of 2014, like that was it. That was my moment, and I could never turn back from that.
Yeah.
Well, and it's amazing because it is so gratifying, and that feeling when you're on stage, and you just know, you can tell by the audience reaction, and everybody's really engaged. I mean, but for me, it was also even more of a significant achievement because one of the things that I dealt with for 25 years of my life was panic attacks. And I had severe panic attacks. I didn't really know what they were because I started in high school, and they became pretty debilitating. And I even when I started to figure out and know what they were, I didn't want to admit what they were. I never told anybody. I never told my twin sister. I never told my best friends. I never told my girlfriends. I never told my family, my parents, nobody, because I didn't want to even say the words, because I felt like I would legitimize it and make it, I just kept hoping it would go away. But they'd show up in all different ways. And one of the worst experiences I ever had was it was in the days of running that Hartford office. So it was back in 2000, I think it was 4 or 5. And I was on stage in front of 70 people. I was asked to speak to a group of leaders in our organization about what we were doing, because we're having success turning this organization around. So it was a nice, accolade type of thing. And I got on stage and I had a panic attack right on stage. And to the point where it happened as I was walking up to the stage, and I got up there and faced the audience, and I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I was dripping sweat. I was beet red. I felt like my shirt was like sucking into my body. I couldn't move. And all I could do was think to turn around. There was a whiteboard behind me, and I just to try and buy time, I just started writing stuff on the whiteboard. To this day, I have no idea what it was. Literally, I don't think I was writing anything. I literally was just trying to buy time and calm myself down. And it didn't work. I turned around after 30 seconds or whatever it was, and I was still. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't talk, and people were like really like wondering what's going on.
Seriously,
And
yeah.
I ran off the stage and out of the room, and
Wow.
it was humiliating. I mean, it was the lowest of lows. And this was not a random audience. These were
Mm-hmm.
people that I worked with, that I
Mm-hmm.
knew, and it was absolutely horrific. And to fall that flat on your face in a public setting like that, and have your ego hit that badly, I mean, you just don't think you can recover.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
that began also a whole different journey for me on
Mm-hmm.
self leadership and leading, getting myself over that issue, which I ultimately did and figured out how to do it. It's kind of like a light switch. If you figure out how to turn it on, you can figure out how to turn it off. You just get control over it. And I had to go through and almost be able to manufacture a panic attack, create a panic attack on command, literally.
Oh, wow.
And I got to the point where I could do that. And when I did that, I knew I could shut it down and shut it off. So, getting in front of that 3,000 person audience, that was a whole other different victory to just be able to do it and make it through. Not only, nail it, which I felt like it did, but just to be able to survive it
Right.
was a big accomplishment. So it was a whole different door opener for me mentally too.
Now, I'm curious. Well, first of all, I love that you. Thank you for sharing that. And I, we all battle adversity and obstacles. And so I'm a person who stutters, and I've had a stuttering problem, my whole life, and it's now part of my story. And so the times when I do it on stage, like fortunately, I sort of, I'm kind of more funny about it now, but like I didn't like it. It would come out and it would make me more nervous, and
Yeah.
and then I would have to sort of combat that, and so like I think everyone sort of has this, their own battle they're going through, and it's important to be more open about it. And I mean that's really cool. And so so first of all, I wanted to totally vibe with that. And then the second thing is, what was your bounce back like? Like after you did that, when was the next time you went on stage? And like, I'm just curious of like how did you get to that point of like I'm ready to go back and do this again in a moment that that was so like humiliating, and the way that you said it.
Yeah, it was really, really tough. One of the things, so I basically that day pretended like I just ate something or whatever
Yep.
and was
Yep.
sick to my stomach and had to leave to throw up. That's what I told the organizer of the event. And so nice of him. He's like, "Oh, well, if you're feeling better, we'll get you back on in about an hour." I'm like, "Oh, Jesus." So I
Go do it again.
literally
Yeah.
had to jump right back into it.
Oh my gosh.
And I probably would give myself a C minus in terms of how I did, but I made it through it. And that helped to get right back into it. But I will tell you, I mean, there wasn't a time for that next probably 5 years that I didn't think about it. And it
Mhm.
still pops into my mind, but I now have the confidence to know and I can control it. But it was scary. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was frightening to be in situations, whether it was a stage or any public situation or a TV type of broadcast or anything like that, where okay, this ugly thing could happen in a really public, humiliating way again. So it was one step at a time, and I think the way you do it is you just get one little tiny victory. Okay, let me not go necessarily back to a 70-person stage. Let me just do another presentation in front of 5 people,
Right.
and let me get comfortable with that, and let me get back up to 10. Let me get up to 15. Just little steps. It's not necessarily having to take this huge leap. It's just progress, not perfection.
Yep.
And that's what got me there.
That's awesome. And that concept of self-leadership too is really important. I like that really tied into, you started owning that part of your life, and you're not going to let it hold you back from living out really your dream. That's something you had to grasp onto and get, build the confidence and the tangible ways that you were going to combat that thing, and it's clearly worked out. And now, I think that's like so cool. Everyone on their journey has those things they have to battle to get to that next step. And to your point, those small victories, you just keep going and keep learning and keep growing. And you're a living example of that, which is awesome.
Thanks. And I think it helps also to realize that everybody's got something.
Yes.
Everybody's dealing with something. I the most confident of confident people, there's something going on that you don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
And whether, I can't tell you how many people, when I've been open about my panic attacks, how many people have opened up to me and said, you know what, I've had that too, and I still have it. And and I've actually seen it happen with people. And I've had friends that say, I had a friend recently just call me up. He's like, dude, and he's been in financial services for 20 years, super, super successful. And he's like, I just had a panic attack in front of a client, and I had another advisor in there watching me to see how I am successful. And I had a panic attack. It just happens. So nobody's perfect. And now when I get on stage, I look out in the audience and I realize, okay, 99% of the people in the audience would be scared shitless to be doing what I'm doing right now. And I don't care if it's CEO of the company, if it's whatever, most people would be scared shitless to stand on a stage for an hour and talk and share stuff and be that open and vulnerable. And everybody's looking at everything from, did you miss a belt loop in your belt, to, is your hair looking dorky, is your whatever. They're analyzing every aspect of you, right? So you're really putting yourself out there, but you got to put it in perspective. I mean, whatever you're doing, and as much as you think everybody else has got it locked in and figured out and wired, you realize, and I know you guys know this, it's not the case.
Yeah.
Everybody's got insecurities. Everybody's got issues. Everybody's got things that they wish they could erase from their memory, and stupid things they've said or done, or mistakes they've made, or humiliations. Everybody's got it.
Yeah.
Part of being a human.
Yes, absolutely. One thing that I get just from talking to you initially is that I think you really excel at self-assessment and knowing, what qualities kind of make up who you are, and make you a leader too. So if somebody is out there and they think, a leadership role is my thing, like I want to go and do, like what Jim does when he goes up and speaks, or when you go up and speak, like, what traits do you think that they absolutely need to have that makes them really, really qualify as like, okay, this person is a strong leader and can kind of, take that and really bring that to the people,
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I know it's one of those that everybody thinks about, or a lot of people wonder about, okay, what are the most important things? I think where it starts is being incredibly authentic. When I started my leadership career, I was trying very hard to be this specific type of person and act a certain way and be a certain way, because I felt like there was a model of how a leader is. And I remember somebody telling a story to my wife at the time of something I did, and she said, that doesn't sound like John. That's not. And they're like, really? Well, what's he like outside of work? And then she had that conversation with me. She's like, you're like two different people, inside of work and outside of work. And it was really unhealthy. And when I started to truly be myself, really be myself, that's when my effectiveness went up and my results went up. People could relate to me more. I was more approachable. I was more authentic, somebody they really wanted to follow. And so I think that's where it starts. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Be authentic and realize that, it's not so much what you say. Don't worry so much about, are you saying the perfect thing, or how you look and everything like that. I mean, people don't really care that much. What they care about and what they're doing is watching you. They're watching what you do, and are you really living how you say people should live, or are you doing the things that you're saying that you're doing? That's more important. So start with, are you leading the life? Are you doing the things that you would want other people to do? And that's kind of the foundation of it, I would say.
I mean, you know how I feel about that answer.
Yes, I was going to say, authentically you. As soon as I heard that, I was like, that's Jim. That's his thing.
I love it, John. I mean, obviously, I fully agree. Authentic leadership is my topic, that I speak about. And what's funny is, as I've formed sort of my message and have given it, I'm myself on stage, and it almost is a way to be like, hey, by the way, I want to encourage you all to be authentic, and also this is me. This is what I do, and not only does it help me like laugh at myself when I make a mistake or something, because I'm just it's like a freedom. It's a sense of freedom where I can just go up there and do my thing, and I'm a goofy dork, like, and I know that I'm comfortable with that, but, and one time I came out, my fly was open, and I was like, you know what I mean, like, it's like it happens. It is what it is.
Never asked back.
Never again. Yeah, that one didn't go. And there's not allowed within 50 feet of that.
Oh,
no, I'm just kidding. But no, but it was a really cool moment where I was like, okay, I'm gonna write this, but I'm also just gonna do it as me. Like, it's not a performance. It's just like a sort of hyped up version of myself, but I enjoy it and I'm passionate about it. So I mean, I of course fully agree with everything you said, and it really is important, and people relate to that. People don't relate to perfect. They don't. No one's perfect, and people try and go up and be perfect. That's not relatable. People relate to humans, and they relate to authenticity, and they relate to when you're being yourself, and they're like, I can see myself in that. Not like the buttoned up and here's leadership, like that's not how humans talk. So when you're up there sharing yourself and your story, like that's what I found, and I was more relatable the deeper I got, and the more myself I was, which is hard for people to do. That's not easy to go out on stage and do that, but obviously that's our work, and we make it happen. But it's a very cool moment, and when you see people relating to your authenticity, it's cool, and again, sort of irreplaceable in any other part of my life.
And it's kind of like what an actor deals with. It's like if they're playing a character and they're playing it really well, and the public doesn't like that character, they don't have to take it personally. It's like, hey, I'm playing a character. It's not me. It's not really who I am. I'm playing that villain. We do that as leaders. It's like, okay, I feel like if I am playing this part, so to speak, I don't have to take it personally if people don't like me. If I'm on stage and I'm being the theatrical version or overly or whatever, I'm still not necessarily getting the personal not attacks, but it's not going on me personally. I think that's how people sometimes frame it in their mind, and it's this veil, this armor that protects them. And in reality, you're right, Jim. It's like the authenticity and the vulnerability. That's what speaks to people, especially now, what we've been through in the last couple of years. I mean, we've gotten a chance to see into people's homes. Like when this virtual thing first came out, everybody was really concerned about the backgrounds, the backdrops. Like, what are we going to, we can't let people see our homes. Like there was a leader at an organization, a Fortune 100 company who truly entertained sending backdrops out to people, the whole field, and having a very consistent backdrop, because we can't let people see. I mean, it wasn't until people realized, that's great to see our CEO on camera and see his dog in the background or his kids running around in the background, and realizing, and the delivery guys at the front door, and doorbells are ringing, or lawnmowers in the background. That's real. That's real life.
Exactly.
And people get attracted to that.
I encourage it with my team. I'm like I want your kids to run in. Like, I want to meet them. I want to know. I don't want to talk to you and not know who your family is. Like, tell me. Like, I have a coworker who her son comes in all the time, and then I'm like, Andrew, what's up, buddy? Like, what's going? Like, it's a really that's fun, and that's how you build camaraderie, of course. But like that's her life. I want to know her life, and then I'll work better with her while I know what's going on. And it's just it's a different way. Not everyone thinks that way. And to your point, like, I remember the background thing. It was so funny. Like, I mean, I could hear the dog. Like, and I know your logo is covering it up, but the dog is there. Like, I hear him eating. Like, go ahead and say
I totally went the other way. I had to apply for a job and did so with that stack of records behind you, and it was perfectly set up.
There you go.
And everything was like just caught the edge just right, so it was perfectly framed up, so it almost looked like it could have been a virtual background, but it was actually the real thing.
You just have a picturesque setup.
Now I just stage everything for we're always on camera. What's kind of up for the the next steps now for you, now that we are slowly, maybe possibly, knock on wood, coming out of the pandemic just a little bit? What is kind of the next steps for the business?
Well, I'm now expanding it and doing, so now it's great to get out there and actually do in-person keynotes, which is so much fun.
It's the
and
best.
Jim, this firsthand. I mean, it's just a blast. I've been doing the virtual thing for the last 2 years, and that's fun, but a fraction of the amount of fun as it is in front of a live audience. So that's happening now, which is great. Getting out on the road again, booking out keynotes for the next year and couple of years actually, which is great. And then just looking to build my team. I mean, I'm fortunate to have a lot of opportunities to work with people and help people. So I've been adding key strategic people to my team that can help deliver on leadership development work that I'm doing with different organizations. So that's really what's been happening. I got a book out there last year, which is great, and I have thoughts and ideas of doing a second one. So that's in the horizon at some point. So lots coming up.
Awesome. And we will make sure we link to that book and everything you have going on. And John, if people want to get in touch with you and find out more about you and become a resource, what's the best way to do that?
Well, two things they can do. One is my website, which is everything, and that's my name. So it's johnlaurito.com, Laurito. That is everything from my book and what I do and my TED Talk and even my podcast. My podcast is the other thing. I've been running a podcast for the last couple of years. I've got about 300 episodes now of leadership topics. It's called Tomorrow's Leader. And it's a lot of fun. I have guests on there usually once a week, and then I'll do 2 solo episodes. Sometimes they're 5 minutes long. It's just an idea or something that I had seen and something with a client or something like that I'll just share. So it's kind of these little nuggets of leadership insights, and it's a lot of fun. I don't do it for there's no purpose other than putting content out there and having some fun doing it.
Totally. And you may recognize a guest on that podcast coming up soon. So very excited for that. And
I feel like I'm in the room with that guy.
Yeah, I wonder who that could be.
Possibly.
But yeah, that's awesome. And so, obviously, connect with John, and there's just so much truth and advice and wisdom coming from you, and a great opportunity to do that. We're excited to share your book, and can't wait to hear when the second book comes out on the horizon, and we'll make sure we tell our folks about that. So, John, it was just a pleasure to chat with you today, and we really appreciate your time and your energy and the passion that you exude for leadership and developing our future leaders.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, guys. Greatly appreciate having me on. It's been a lot of fun talking to you guys. Keep up the great work. I love what you're doing, and again, appreciate you both.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And how do they get in touch with us, Alan?
Yes, that's what I was going to say is if this is your first time listening to us, welcome. Thank you. You can listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can subscribe to us. Make sure you rate us with 5 stars as well. That does help us out.
That's the only rating you're
the only one you're allowed to give,
correct.
is 5 stars. Yes, nothing less.
Correct.
Yes, so make sure you do that. You can also find Hustling Sideways. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and Instagram as well. We're Hustling Sideways everywhere. If you have a side hustle of your own, you can do that, and you can be a guest on this podcast as well. Send us an email, hustlingsideways@gmail.com. And Jim.
Alan, keep on hustling.